Canadians in real estate go together like Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid at the Four Nations face-off. They go together like a fine wine and a perfectly cooked steak. They go together like Kobe and Shaq in their prime, or Jordan and Pippen winning all those championships. Needless to say, Canadians and real estate are two things that go together hand in hand. And with all the changes going on in the world, regardless of what's happening, there are 7 key factors that dictate Canadian real estate home values, or in fact values for real estate across the world. Let's break down those 7 key factors and why they become super important when discussing real estate values. If you find any value in this video, click on that like and subscribe button so we can go out to more people just like you looking to learn about home values in Canada or anywhere they are considering real estate. Let's talk about the 7 key factors that drive real estate values, and we will break down each one by one, but here are the 7: cost of ownership, job security, population growth, supply, regulatory changes, global factors, and replacement value versus market value. First one up, we have cost of ownership. And this is one that will always be at the forefront moving forward. Cost of ownership includes things like interest rates. So this usually affects real estate first. As interest rates go up or go down, we generally see property pricing reflective of that. For example, when the rates went up quite a bit in February 2022 into the middle of 2022, we actually saw real estate prices come down very quickly from basically February 22 to July of 22. It's been a few years since, but overall, we saw the most of that drop in pricing right away as rates started to go up. Monthly costs will obviously play a big factor in that. Things like taxes, which in the city of Toronto have been increasing as of late, and other things such as just the overall maintenance of a property. So cost of ownership, definitely number 1 on the list. If we take a look at number 2, job security, and with all the discussion in and around the world these days, economy and unemployment rates are 2 things that will be important to monitor moving forward. As the unemployment rates continue to rise, we generally see pullback in real estate pricing. If things like unemployment remain low, generally people are more secure in their jobs and will make more real estate decisions. When looking at the economy overall, definitely several factors at play, and generally a strong economy leads to strong job growth, and a weaker economy leads to a weaker employment sector. So those 2 factors in job security are super important. Next up, we have population growth. And this has been a discussion in the last few years in Canada, as we have seen some of the highest numbers of population or immigration that we've ever seen. Population growth, for example, incoming population, even though that has decreased, or they said it's going to decrease in the coming years, it's still a pretty considerable amount of people coming into Canada. And most of those people will land in either Toronto or Vancouver. So the 2 hottest areas of the country will generally be those Toronto and Vancouver markets. They typically receive the most amount of people coming in from other countries. Toronto will always remain in demand for that reason, and it is one of the hubs where generally people will either come to first, or if they start in other cities, will generally migrate to after a couple years of living in the country. When you look at universities, most of them are in the major cities. So for example, the city of Toronto has a number of universities, colleges, and post-secondary options. That's why Toronto does remain high on the list for people coming into the country, especially on things like student visas and anyone who's looking to study or increase their knowledge going to one of these universities. That's where Toronto still remains very desirable for people coming into the country. Next up, we have supply, and this age-old saying, supply and demand. Well, in the city of Toronto, depending on what you're looking for in any market, supply is generally low compared to the amount of population that is in the city of Toronto. If we look at months of inventory, and this is a number that we talk about on this channel so often, knowing what the months of inventory is in the specific pocket that you are looking to trade in, whether you're a buyer or a seller, will dictate typically where the pricing is looking, or give a little bit of foreshadowing to where the pricing could go in the future. Some of the most desirable pockets of the city, especially if you have those properties that are highly desirable or properties that people want to aspire to, those properties in the best areas will be in high demand regardless of what's happening in the market. And even the slowest markets that we've seen in the last little while, those properties are still selling for multiple offers in those pockets because there just really isn't any supply for what people are looking for. The location of supply, of course, as just mentioned, and micro market specifics. So again, keeping in mind the specific location is so important. When you are looking at micro markets, we can't generalize Greater Toronto area. Something that's in the Greater Toronto area, so maybe 2 hours from the city, will perform very differently than a detached or semi-detached house in areas like Bloor West Village, Roncesvalles, Leslieville, Riverdale. Those pockets will always always remain super desirable. Same with CO4 if we're looking at Lawrence Park North. All these areas, Trinity Bellwoods, are in such high demand for those properties that they remain very active in any kind of market. And property specific, of course, the property type generally dictates the budget, but people who are, for example, in a condo looking to step up into a semi-detached house, those semis that if you watch this channel, you will know are incredibly in high demand, will always be in high demand because there's just really not that many of them available. Number 5 on the list, we have regulatory changes. And there are so many rules that have come into effect in the last few years. We just received the new mortgage rules for down payments. So now you no longer have to put down 20% at $1 million. That new number is now at the 1.5 range. And that's still something that will start developing as we go into 2025. The Fair Housing Plan that was in 2017, when the market started to ramp up, that Fair Housing Plan came in, stress tests came in for mortgages. All those elements actually put a halt on the Toronto real estate market for some time. And all of Canada had different segments of when those rules, when they were in play, started to affect certain markets. But in Toronto, 2017, it took a couple years for things to kind of ramp up again from there. But definitely we saw the effects of having a stress test when we were coming out of 2022 into the last couple of years. We look at the new rules. There's an anti-flipping tax in Canada, and that came out Canada-wide in 2024. Essentially, if someone flips their property or sells their property within 1 year, they're subject to a 20% tax. And in BC, they just implemented a rule in the start of 2025 where if somebody sells their property within 2 years, they will be taxed as well as the Canadian flipping tax. So these are some items where anytime regulatory changes come in, will have an effect on the market. And of course, the foreign buyer ban, which has now been extended through 2027, definitely at play there when it comes to regulatory changes in the city of Toronto or Canada-wide, and one of the factors that drives real estate values. Number 6 on the list, global factors. And of course, there are many factors when considering global factors. Things like leadership changes, presidential elections, prime ministers, all these things, even provincially, have an effect on real estate values, and especially in different segments or different sectors of the market. And if we look at some of the things that we have seen in the last couple of years, banking shutdowns, war, tariff announcements, all these factors have an effect on real estate prices. And it'll be interesting to see as we continue forward what other types of global factors will come into play when looking at real estate values. Number 7 on the list, and this one's always interesting to monitor, is replacement value versus market value. In the last couple of years, we have seen the slowest new construction condo market we have ever seen. In fact, 2024 will go down as the lowest one ever on record for the amount of condo sales on the pre-construction side. The biggest factor for that is that the cost to build these condos is quite high. The cost to build anything right now is high. But on the condo front, we're looking at around $1,400 a square foot to get the shovels in the ground. And that's after you pay all the things like all the development charges, building charges, development costs, building costs, the builders, everybody who plays a role in getting that project up off the ground. If we look at the cost to renovate, and even if you were to purchase a property and do some renovations in it, anywhere between, let's say, $200 a square foot to $600 a square foot is typically the numbers that we've been hearing on the cost to renovate. So if you have a 1,000 square foot house, for example, you're looking at around anywhere between $200,000 and $600,000 to renovate that property. Of course, if somebody purchases one of those properties that needs that kind of work, if they're putting in $500,000 for renovation, they most likely won't be selling that property at a loss. Now, there are factors, or there really isn't that much margin if doing that and flipping it. But if someone was to do that, live in it for some time and then resell it, the typical resale value of that property will surely go up after the renovation, especially if it's in a great area. That's what we're seeing affect values on the resale side. The gap between pre-construction and resale right now is about 40%. And that's what we're seeing here in the city of Toronto and across the board, is that if you are looking to purchase a brand new condo that's coming up on the pre-sale side, you can usually buy a condo across the street from that project that's maybe 5 to 15 years old at about a 40% difference in pricing at this moment. And that number may continue to grow as there are more condos on the market, for example, in this given time than what's currently being built. And that may change as we move forward. And there was a time in the past where when you were buying a pre-construction project, you were generally paying below market value for the future construction of that property. property. In around 2016, 17, 18, that's when we started to see those values start to change. So now you were purchasing for market value for future construction. And then in the early 2020s, we started to see future pricing on those construction projects. And that's where we're at now. And I don't anticipate that changing moving forward, but it certainly has an effect on the real estate values in the future. If the cost to rebuild them or to build something from scratch continues to go up, it will be hard to keep the pricing down on the stuff that's already out there on the market. Those are the 7 factors that affect real estate values Canada-wide, worldwide. And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below on if you would add an 8th or a 9th. If you ever want to discuss what's happening on the Toronto real estate market right now, click on that first link down below, scan a QR code, and book a discovery call with me at any time. Let's discuss how we can help you navigate the Toronto real estate market regardless of any of these factors going on and what's happening on the ground level. I'm Michael Ouzas. Thanks for watching.